Hey, everybody.
Hello.
Back with Jacqui Hardt once again for the final of the 3, making you the first one to hit 4 out of the park with us.
I'm very honored. I should get some kind of crown or sash or I don't know.
I will send you something via mail very shortly.
Oh, I hope it's a hazmat crown. Oh, I would love one of those in my training.
Well, so the first one we talked about some general things, and then last episode we were talking about the non-calamity, just kind of like general hazards and that kind of stuff of what you're going to find inside these locations. And now we get to the carnage, right? The part where something has gone wrong, and now enter Hazmat Joe.
Yep, poor Joe. Joe's going to have a fun day at work.
Terrible. What kind of things could he? All right. So we talked about medical emergencies in the first episode as far as like, let's say somebody in the lab has a medical emergency. But on this one, let's talk about a little bit more about what happens to Joe.
And it's very kind of timing because we've got massive stuff happening in different parts of the country right now. And this could very well be a scenario playing out as we speak.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, it's so situationally unique that a lot of this is doing pre-work and then knowing what you're going to encounter before the big disaster happens. And then when you're getting there, it's very much using your triaging skills, figuring out what's going on, what are the hazards, and finding out as much information as possible from the people who know about that facility.
If they're even around.
If they're around, yeah. I mean, if it happens in the middle of the night or they're evacuated, that's when it gets really challenging. Now, the good thing about the majority of high containment facilities is the facilities are designed to be really, really robust themselves, because you don't want anything to get out of the facility, right?
So a lot of these buildings are designed from the ground up to be a lab. It's not like they're going to like, hey, there's a vacant building there. Let me pop a BSL-4. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, they're highly designed facilities because their utilities are unique. They often don't have things like windows because of the security, and also because windows are portals of exit and entry. So they're usually solid wall structures. They have, non-penetrable, sealable laboratories where, things won't leak out. But then again, also that helps to stop, floods not leaking in, right? So they have interlocked doors. They have multiple pre-gowning areas. So the hot zone is usually right in the middle of the center of that building and protected by multiple layers. So, the good news is that these facilities are probably going to survive better in catastrophic situations than regular structures. So that will promote containment if and when those situations occur.
Interesting. So right as of this recording, there's a hurricane category 5 that's bearing down on Florida. And, that means there's going to be anywhere from 3 to 9 feet, because it hasn't happened right now, of water that's coming in. So you would imagine that these buildings are basically ships that are strapped to the ground, watertight, airtight, everything tight.
One would hope, especially for those high containment labs. And usually they are located in more remote places. They're probably not on the beach next to Joe's Crab Shack, because they need their own space and utilities to be able to service that facility.
You got to get rid of those crustaceans.
But I guarantee there will be BSL-3 labs and many BSL-2 labs in the path of that storm in Florida. Now, you brought up a good point. Will there be people there? Well, honestly, in mass disasters like this one, their own personal lives are going to take precedence over looking after their livelihood, their job. There may be a few dedicated souls who decide to go sit in some people evacuate to their areas of employment because they're safer than their homes.
That's pretty valid. I mean, I don't know. So, like for us in our profession, right? A hurricane comes, we go to work because we don't. Right. That's what we chose to do. Right. We chose to be there. Yeah. Is that the same? Is there there's nobody that would be dedicated to be like, listen, I understand. I got to kiss my family goodbye. You guys evacuate. No. I have to go ensure the safety of X, Y, and Z. No.
That is highly unlikely.
Okay.
That, a company would mandate it. I think they may ask for volunteers if anyone is willing to do that. But, high containment labs are very secure and very safe and very sturdy. And honestly, I would probably rather have my family in that building than my regular house, right? So there may be people who say, look, I'll go camp at work because it's safer for me.
Okay.
And, we'll see, but it's likely not going to be mandated that the people are going to be there. And if anyone is going to be there, it's almost certainly going to be the facilities managers rather than the scientists.
Okay.
So the facilities managers may not have that detailed biosafety knowledge of what's going on inside it. They may have a general awareness, likely because they're running the facility, but that, detailed knowledge of what organism is where, which study is going on, what pathogen they're using, they're not going to know that. They're going to care about, is the framework of the building it's still there?
Right.
Or is it functional? Do we have utilities? And then maybe they can help with basic animal care. If it's an animal facility, like can they provide feed and bedding and water to keep those specimens alive? And honestly, they might make the decision that that might not be feasible. They will probably try their best to do it. They will almost certainly have a business continuity plan, though. So this is a plan that large organizations have, and small organizations may have them too, that if something occurs that catastrophically impacts their business operations, they have a plan that they've already written that says, well, we have an emergency generator. We get backup diesel here. I remember we had a brownout a few years ago in San Diego, and the company I worked at, their business continuity plan kicked in because their freezers, which have all of their intellectual property, all their specimens, all their everything, they had to keep them cold because that would kill the company. That would be, their entire business would fail. So they kicked their business continuity plan into gear, got their emergency generators, then they ran out of diesel. They had to get more diesel in. And this was just a power cut. There was no carnage and chaos and flooding and wind and anything going on. So, business continuity plans can help, but it does depend on the severity of the emergency. I mean, if you have a tornado that entirely destroys your facility, what do you do, right?
Yeah.
So,
well, I mean, even if you have I'm thinking okay, we have a fire, we have a tornado like that. You have, I would imagine, fire suppression systems. Yes. Like we have computer rooms and we have certain halons, but in these things you might have specific and detailed and different suppression systems. Like compressed gas releases. What happens if a cylinder is exposed? There are certain cylinders you do not want to leak out, like poisons and stuff like that. So
and
there's a lot of considerations.
Laboratories, they might have toxic materials. We've already established they have narcotics. Usually, though, it's just standard water sprinklers in these facilities. You don't really have, I mean, if you're working in a very sensitive electronic lab with it depends on the situation, but most of the time you're looking at standard fire suppression systems, usually not that many that are gaseous. They're usually saved for server rooms and document archives and things like that. But so yes, they may well, and they are likely going to be equipped with those types of systems. However, you might have a situation where it is just a standard lab and you've got a fire going on. And, the challenge with animal facilities is those animals are going to either be released or they're going to be freaking out, right? If you imagine...
Oh,
yeah. I mean, so in large livestock areas, those animals are going to be bulking and, attempting to escape, right? Fight and flight kicks in for the animals too. So, they are strong. Some of these, livestock animals, if anybody's dealt with just horses or cows,
even a small pig is
1,000-pound animals. And then in a panic state, they can break through their enclosure, put over a cage, just so in these
and then
situations.
You got people building the X-Men where they're super powered mice and stuff.
Yeah,
crazy.
The spiders, the radioactive spiders.
There are also genetically modified organisms. Right. And you don't want them to escape because that could impact the wild type populations. You have things like bird research. They can fly away. Right. And if one of them has bird flu, goodbye the entire chicken population of that state. Right.
Oh, wow.
So there are other concerns. Like, I know this sounds silly, but there are plant labs that work with genetically modified organisms. Some of them work with noxious weeds. Some of them have plant pathogens on. If one of those escapes, that could kill the entire agriculture for that industry in that state. There are very strict plant release controls, right? And these are in greenhouses. Now, we haven't talked about plant containment facilities yet, but, plants can't get up and walk around. However, they have seeds and pollen, and if they're blowing around in a tornado, right? And these are just housed in greenhouses. And greenhouses are not particularly robust in any kind of weather situation or flood situation, right? So the impact of firefighters in those situations are probably minimal. Plants is probably the thing you worry least about. But when you're getting into live animal rooms, canines, monkeys, livestock, even rodents. If you have escaped rodents or insects, they're going crazy in these situations and they'll bite, they'll run, right? What do you do? Well, honestly, there's not much you can do. If they're escaped already, the goal is to try and keep them as contained as possible. Like, don't open the doors and let them out. Number one, because they're probably going to charge at you. Right? They're going to attack and try and flee, or they might bite or injure you. So staying away from them, honestly, is my best advice in a catastrophic release situation.
You just said something and it popped in my mind. And, the people that are working in these facilities are, they know what they're doing. And then you have an emergency and you have, the fire department, the police department, the EMS, whatever comes in there. And I could honestly say that the biggest problem I can see happening would be a well-meaning firefighter, cop, or whatever that goes, I'm an animal lover. I have to let this thing out. I can't let this poor doggy, and just thinking they're doing the right thing. And they open the door, and out goes like the mutant,
right.
Yeah, radioactive llama. Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, we're in lockdown again.
I can absolutely see that happening. And so this is where incident command comes in very stringently. You have to have the best pre-knowledge of what's in that facility. And those canines could have all manner of infectious diseases. They could have a dog disease. It's not just human diseases that they're studying. They're studying animal pathogens, and also they're studying zoonotic diseases that can cross the species barrier. So, we talked in the last episode about how you can catch herpes B from monkeys. Well, herpes B is inherently a monkey disease, but it can cause illness in humans, right? So you don't know what these animals have. And so that is absolutely a valid point that you should not release these facility animals. They're in a containment lab for a reason. You want to keep them contained.
So are you aware of any labs that have been involved in natural disasters, earthquakes, tornadoes, hurricanes,
how did that
floods?
go?
Like, how did all of it go? What were some of the failure points, and then what were some of the lessons learned? And
So fortunately, I have not been directly involved with a catastrophic emergency. I am lucky in my career that hasn't occurred, because it is a horribly stressful time for anyone, including people who are trying to maintain the safety of the people working in that facility. But think worst case scenario. I mean, in these laboratories, you have the potential for people to be trapped. Honestly, that's your primary goal as an emergency responder, is to get the people out.
Right.
And then if you can stabilize the structure, that's a win, right? You can contain the structure, you can close the structure, you can put out any fires, and then basically you then walk away, because then you're going to let the organizations take over. Their business continuity plans will kick in. Honestly, they're going to be the people that best know the animals, the situation. They're going to call in vets. They're going to call in whoever they need to take care of what's in the building. So as an emergency responder in a catastrophic situation, you're going to primarily care about people safety. You're going to go in as a first responder. You're going to do your search and rescue. You're going to evaluate, have we got everybody out? And then you're going to close the door, and then you're going to walk away, right? Because stuff will break inside, cage racks will fall over, rodents will probably be running around in their housing suite. There could be unstabilized utilities. There could be compressed gases that have toppled over and are damaged, or leaking gas systems. Honestly, the best thing to do is get everybody out and stay out and close it so nobody can get back in again.
That sounds fair enough. I mean, I think that's the way.
Experts.
Yeah.
Non-intervention. It's my favorite policy.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Now, it gets tricky when you have to go in and rescue people and there's a contamination risk, right? So you also have the risk from the animals going nuts, as we've talked about, right? So you've got to protect yourself as best as possible and trying to extract a victim from that situation. And you have to make a very hard but conscious decision. Am I going to put myself at an unacceptable level of risk rescuing this person? And you guys do that as first responders all the time. So you've got to try and think about, is there a way, you all work the problem, how do we get this person out without making it a bigger issue ourselves?
Right.
You might have tools that you can use as protection or shields, or I don't know what gear emergency responders would have to fight off a radioactive rabid llama. But, are there tools that you have?
I got the llama tool.
Yeah, we have probes.
And also, if other law enforcement are there with weapons, that might be your only option. I hate to go there.
No, but
if it's a life-threatening situation to an emergency responder, you're going to have to make a difficult decision to protect yourself.
I've always said it's better to start the conversation before it happens than to have to figure it out on the fly. And there are tools in the toolbox, like doing nothing, like just, kind of abandoning ship or shooting things. At least think it out now before it happens, so that you are prepared for the situation when it happens.
Yeah. So there's that aspect of just the animal. But then if it's a biological containment lab, you have a risk of exposure. These animals are being released. The freezers might have fallen over and released the pathogen. Containers might be broken. Waste containers might have been fallen over. You have a risk of exposure. So at this point, you're thinking personal protective equipment. It would not be wrong to go in your SCBA, because that's going to be your ultimate protection. And then you are going to do a decontamination of yourself. as you exit the space. Now, for biologicals, ideally you're using some form of disinfectant. Bleach is the go-to one.
Okay.
If you just do a mass douse, though, it will probably dilute the pathogen to a portion where you're under some kind of exposure limit. So, if you only have water, that is a method, but some kind of bleach decontamination is ideal as you're exiting the space.
One of the things our department had done for biologicals, and this really came up during the whole Ebola crisis, was, a standard operating procedures where if, we were sprayed down with a not heavily diluted bleach solution, what was it, like a 1 to 5, I think, Bob?
It's usually 10% bleach is the go-to.
The go-to. So, and then it sat, on surface for X amount of minutes, right? And then we would undress the responder from there. So that's that is a simple solution that can be easily deployed and, is very effective.
And you have to have bleach on your trucks. You have to make sure that you have bleach on your truck, right? People don't think about, they've got all the, Jaws of Life and all that other fun toys that you guys play with. But a simple a gallon of bleach could be what you need in this situation.
Right. Luckily, if us as first responders get on scene, the hazmat people are going to have bleach without a shadow of a doubt. But a good heads up commander who's getting information from the hazmat team coming in saying, hey, listen, you need to decon with bleach. Luckily, you can get bleach almost anywhere.
Yes. However, think Hurricane Milton, right?
Right.
You're not going to be able to dispatch a hazmat crew to every biological release potential facility in the state of Florida in the next 3 weeks, right? So if you can, in preparedness for these events, especially for something that you know about, like an earthquake you can't know about, tornado probably not, but hurricane, if you're in Florida or Georgia or wherever it's going to be impacted, throw a gallon of bleach in your truck now. They usually do, because especially from like a FEMA point of view, when they go into floodwaters, all floodwaters are considered hazardous materials. Yep.
So, decon is done anytime somebody put a toe in floodwater, you go through a decon.
We used to carry the dry bleach packets that you would hydrate and weighs nothing.
Yeah, great. Love it. So, it's all about preparedness. And it sounds like you've already got these things in your arsenal. You just remember to pull them out if you walk into a rabid llama situation. So that's decon is really, really important. And also, if for some reason you start showing symptoms of exposure, it's critical that person receives follow-up care. So go through your post-exposure protocols that you have within your division. And you should also connect with the organization to find out the nature of that contamination, so that when you go to an occupational health professional, medical professional, they have as much information as possible. And you say, look, we went in this facility, they had this, and this pathogen. I'm experiencing this, and this symptoms. I've got, maybe they're working with chickenpox virus and you start coming with welts, or, they're working with measles, or you have a bird flu facility, or, it could be any pathogen, and you're starting to experience symptoms. You need to get care immediately for that. There may be prophylaxis available. There may be vaccines available that they can give in special situations. It might not be a vaccine that you receive regularly as a normal population, but they might have specialist vaccines. And also, the sooner you get treatment, the better. There are pathogens in these laboratories, especially BSL-3 and higher, that will kill you if you don't seek treatment and prophylaxis. And some, there may be no treatment. So the best thing to do is not get it in your body.
It makes sense. I know we have more on the outline for transport stuff, but that I think is for another time because I have a feeling we're going to have to, we're definitely going to regroup. We're going to give them time to breathe and chew on this whole concept, and we will absolutely reconvene with you.
I'll be so excited. I'm really glad to be able to share these very unique situations, which people in your community may not have any idea of what is going on.
Even where we are, I had no idea that the facilities that were in some of the university institutions, where you're talking, and that isn't just the biological. When I refer to that specific in previous episodes, that was more talking about the radiation. Because
there's radiation, chemical.
They're taking the mice, they're depleting them of their immune system with insanely high levels of radiation that are just right there in the middle of Manhattan. So
and it's very prevalent in locations of the country which are research hubs. So Bay Area, San Diego, Boston,
Atlanta.
There are Atlanta, so hospitals, academic institutions, military installations. I mean, they're doing their own research on biological weapons, biological warfare, right? So you don't hear about them at all because that is highly classified and highly secret. And then, emergency response, they probably have their own emergency response teams just because of the secrecy involved. But in those areas where are research hubs, there is a definite risk to those local emergency responders in those spaces because that just exists in their area and they may not realize. So hopefully this has helped them plant that seed of what the possibilities are. And as you mentioned, Bobby, to kind of think in advance and how do you prepare for those very random, weird, radioactive rabid llama situations.
They'll get you every time.
Well, hopefully not. Happy.